the insurance department, or somebody.
All right, it being shortly after 1 o'clock, we'll open the public hearing on House Bill 555 FNA, an act appropriating state general fund surplus towards the retirement system, unfunded accrued liability. I don't see anyone from the House here to introduce the bill. Either you or the vice chair. I usually, make the vice chair do it.
You didn't know that when you took the job, did you?
I don't think I had a choice.
But you don't have to. You don't have to move.
Oh, I don't?
No, no.
So much for the theater.
In fact, I've already read the title, so all you have to do is say,
I'm pleased to.
Mr. Chair, I do introduce House Bill.
I got it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Dan Ennis from District 7, Bradford, New Hampshire. I'm pleased to introduce to you House Bill 555 FNA, which is an act appropriating state general fund surplus toward the retirement system unfunded accrued liability. Thank you.
You did an excellent job.
I'm well trained by you.
All right. New Hampshire Retirement System, Marty. Come on down.
Thank you, Senator, and for the record, Marty Carlin, representing the New Hampshire Retirement System. As is typical with legislation, NHRS doesn't have an official position on this bill, but we will not say no to someone giving us additional funds. Essentially, the way this is set up is when there's a certified surplus, some amount of that would go towards paying off our unfunded liability. We can accept those funds and apply them, as they come in. So there's no technical issues with the bill. In some ways, it's perhaps more aspirational than actual because the money can be used for something else before we get to the end of the year. But that's really all I have. I just signed up to answer questions if anybody had any.
Senator Versa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in to testify. On the average, it says here that 75% of the biennial surplus would be paid. On the average, what do we typically pay, or is there a set amount?
There is no set amount over and above the towards the unfunded. The employer contributions are all unfunded is built into the employer contributions, and that's based on the payroll of each employer. Typically, across the 4 member groups, the unfunded accounts for more than 75% of the rates that folks are paying now. So it's a significant amount. I think last fiscal year, I think retirement contributions from employers were in the vicinity of $600 million.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Where did the 75% come from?
I can't say. I think was this an amendment or is this the original? This is the original.
It says introduced.
Yeah, so I was there when Representative Lekis introduced it in the House ED&A, but that was back in early January, and I'm not sure how he and the co-sponsors decided on the percentage.
Thank you.
Additional questions, Senator?
Not of Mr. Carlin.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand this. I'm a little bit new to the retirement system and finance and all of this, and I want to make sure I'm understanding exactly what this bill does. So if we're taking 75% of the biennial surplus, how is this going to impact the payoff that we have currently in place? I think we're set to pay it off by 2037, correct?
2039, but yeah. Actually, by way of example, there was a House bill that has been added to HB2 by the House that would appropriate $50 million in this biennium towards the unfunded liability, and we just recently got the fiscal analysis on that, and we're sending it over to LBA. But if the a hypothetical future surplus, was 50 million, that would lower employer contribution rates across the board by between 0.09 and 0.21% of pay, which in fiscal 26, this 50 million appropriation, if it were to go through, would reduce the state's employer contributions by 830,000 and the municipalities and school districts by 3.5 million. And that's not a one-time savings. That basically you're paying extra on your mortgage, so you're not paying interest on that amount. So that any appropriations, whether it's this House Bill 50 or anything under 555, would be recognized over a 20-year period. So it would lower the employer rates, that percentage going forward over the 20 years, and you'd save, I think, the long term, the 50 million reduces 20 years worth of employer contributions would have been about 103 or 104 million. So this is very analogous to, putting an extra payment on something you're paying over a long term. So you're not paying the interest over time.
One follow-up. So would this shorten the overall term from 2039 to shorter, or would it just lessen the payments each year?
Just lessen the payments each year. These appropriations wouldn't move the needle on, the 2039, but anything that comes in would be directly applied to reducing employer contribution rates by some amount.
So it would amount to a minor real estate or minor tax relief to the communities.
It's, minor's a relative term, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to answer that question, but it's, in the first year, it's over 4.3 million combined. That savings is expected to grow as payroll grows, because our rates are set on a percentage of covered payroll. So it would be a little bit more in 27, a little bit more in 28. Okay. And it's not an immediate 1 year, you get all this money up front. It's more of a long-term savings.
Okay, thank you.
Senator.
Well, thank you, Mr. First of all, Mike, thank you for coming. But given the plan that we have in place, we're on a path to take care of the unfunded liability by 2039.
Yeah, there is a funding in statute, a funding plan. Basically, the bulk of our unfunded, the $5 billion nut out of the 5.7, is scheduled to be paid through employer contributions through fiscal 29, and anything that has incurred since 2017, they're paid off on 20-year biennial layers. So that was a good strategy by the legislature and the Decennial Commission to prevent liabilities from ever growing to where they are now again, because you're sort of paying off, over shorter periods, not letting it build. So, this will speed it up or reduce the amounts paid every year going forward, but there is a plan in place to answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Birdsell is trying to decide whether she has a question or not.
I don't think he's the one to ask the question, but I'm just going to throw it out there, if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So if we get a surplus, let's say we get 100 million surplus, 75% of that surplus, in the past, we've been able to pay one-time projects with some of that surplus. If we are paying 75%, that means of that 100 million, 75 million will be paid to the retirement fund, and that would only allow 25 million for any expenses that came out. Okay.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so we had a slightly different interpretation of that just in the office, was that, if this is a surplus after the books are closed and everything's said and done. So if a future legislature wanted to take that surplus and do something else with it before, July 1, the surplus is gone. There's not going to be a surplus to go to NHRS. So a member of House Finance referred it to me as it's a position, and it may incentivize future legislatures, rather than using all the surplus funds on one-times or on starting new programs, to dedicate some of it to NHRS. But it doesn't, I don't think you're setting the budget every 2 years, you're deciding what's in it, and then they calculate the surplus after that. So that's the surplus that we believe this is talking about.
Senator Rose.
Thank you. I don't really think Mr. Carlin is the right person to ask this of, but like Senator Herzl,
Yeah.
he's sitting in the chair. If I were a suspicious and skeptical legislator who either wanted to pay down that liability more quickly than 2039, might I not set up my budget for the next 2 years so that there's a larger surplus at the end of it? And on the other hand, if I thought 2039, that the path that we were on was reasonable and we're working toward it, would I not create a smaller surplus? Like I remember, I think 2 budgets ago, we had a surplus of $44,000 projected at the end of the biennium. So 75% of 44,000 is not a whole lot, but I don't know that you're the right person to ask, but I don't, you're sitting in the chair.
It's a fair question. I think I understand it, and I think I am not the person to answer that. Sorry, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The bill as it is right now goes for employer contributions to reduce those. I mean, you guys are in charge. If you wanted it to reduce from 2039 to 2038 or to 2038 in 2 months or 10 months, you know, you would need to restructure the bill, but that is possible to do. But right now, I don't have any more questions for you, sir.
Okay.
I don't see any more hands right now, and if they have additional questions, I believe they know where to get your phone number.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, you take care. Next one on the list, Kate. Oh, you don't need to speak. Oh, all right. Catherine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Catherine Heck, and I represent the Municipal Association. So House Bill 555, we support the concept of any type of additional payment toward the unfunded liability. However the bill is structured, I can see that there could be concerns, as expressed by Senator Rosenwald, one way or the other. We do agree that the legislature would be able to spend down the surplus, and there might not be able to be any available to pay down the liability. However, as Mr. Carlin explained, as the House Bill 50 example is illustrated, and I do have a handout I can show you, House Bill 50 was amended and now incorporated into House Bill 2, and that pays $50 million on the unfunded liability in a one-time payment, and that translates into $105 million in savings over 20 years. Our current employer rates make up 75 to 82% of the costs we're currently paying. So the faster we spend down that debt, right, our rates are reduced. We know anecdotally that from other states that are putting down large payments, like Connecticut, $2.63 billion on their unfunded liability, their pension system is not as healthy as ours, so that was a good move by them. But they also want to continue to make changes in their pension system. And as we can see from the 4 bills that are still kind of up in the air here in the legislature, we do have $141 million will be assessed onto the U-all if all of that legislation is passed. So it's kind of a push-pull. So if we want to make changes to the retirement system, this would kind of work to net zero some of those changes as well, if that's the legislature's preference to do so. So we do support this concept. We do know that states that have engaged in this, and we do have a great program to pay out till 2039, but every time we pass a bill, that goes on to the unfunded liability. If we pass one this year, that goes out 20 more years. So we just don't want to dig the hole any further. And of course, the unfunded liability, we start paying on that in our next rate, which is 2026. So it's not like we wait till 2043 to start paying on those dollars. Our rates would reflect that the next time they set the rates. So this would work to reduce property taxation, you know, and benefit the taxpayers, maybe not in the short term, but certainly in the long term. So I'm certainly happy to take any questions.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. So you brought up a bill that's not before us. House Bill 50, which would reduce employer costs by like $4 million a year. Another proposal, which the Senate passed and laid on the table, Senate Bill 114, would reduce those employer costs by about $28 million a year right away. This has an uncertain benefit, but I guess my question is, are you familiar with the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Other Drug Funds?
Yes.
And the reason I ask, Mr. Chairman, is that fund was created, I think, in 1991, and it was implemented 1 year and then suspended every budget for the next 20 years. So what does this really guarantee?
So I think to the legislation, again, we support the concept of any additional payment toward the unfunded liability, whether that's through a policy proposal that could be binding in law, that certainly it can't bind any future legislature, or any type of one-time payment. So we just wanted to support that concept because it would provide relief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is
Thank
there
you very
anybody that's
much.
changed their mind about testifying? We're at the end of the list. And we'll close the public hearing. Pardon?
No.
This was the reason that we were meeting today. And it's the only FN we had. And so the chair of finance decided that we should get it out of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't know that I want to take any action today on it. I want to let the testimony sink in. Certainly, with the people that have talked about various things, and since I've got the people from the retirement system and the people from municipal, certainly I have talked about other things, like looking at how much it would cost to put some matching for the state employees into their contributions to their 401 type accounts, which wouldn't affect the retirement system at all. But that same benefit could be the actual towns and cities and stuff could adopt that or not adopt that to augment the system. You know, possibly even the retirement system.
Mr. Chair, if you're not.
Yep.
I need to.
You're good.
All right, thank you.
You know, that many retirement systems have either the ability to buy an annuity or to convert your retirement into a retirement system that has a COLA in it, you have the choice at retirement of taking the higher monthly annuity at that time or convert it to one with a COLA built into it. And basically it wouldn't cost the retirement system any additional funds. But if the person did want to take that reduced retirement, that they could. And there's other things out there that we need to consider. So as we go into HB2 and other things, looking at what we want to do with the retirement, some of those are probably longer term, may need to get put into some kind of a study. But again, I want you all thinking out there because there's no one of us that has the magic bullet that's going to solve this. So with that, I'll let you discuss anything you want. But if we do, I guess we should go into executive session. All right, well, do I have a motion to go into executive session? All right, we have a motion from Senator D, seconded by Senator Rosenwald, go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we are in executive session, so. Comments?
Here we go.
Senator Rosenwald?
I'm a control freak. Because I've been on finance committees now for, I think, 8 terms, I like the legislature and the finance committee every 2 years to take another look at our priorities rather than make what looks like a promise, but it isn't really. I'm a control freak.
And
Neil Kirk taught me that.
our representative from where?
I learned a lot about budgeting from him.
I guess, to me, I wonder, what does this bill accomplish that we couldn't accomplish otherwise? And does it put constraints on us that maybe are unwise?
Senator
A couple
D.
of good points. We had a commission study the retirement system. They put together a plan. The plan's working. This is, to me, is bit difficult to understand why this is in place at this time. We've got a lot of other things that we could handle with the surplus rather than taking 75%. We got $300 million on the table in the Senate right now of spending asks that we've passed. We've passed. So it's neither the time nor the place for this.
It's a big percentage, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's minuscule. Really.
If I could, we could always, in the budget, in any budget, do anything with surplus funds.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with this bill. I think it is aspirational. And, as somebody who has been long involved in retirement issues, the savings are significant in the long run. I think, we heard that testimony today. There's no question if we, can pay down the unfunded liability, all of the employer groups, counties, municipalities, schools, and state are going to benefit over the course of the amortization period. That being said, it's like a lot of other things. I mean, if you read HB 2, I'm sure Senator D'Alessandro's are already, primed to bring back the congregate grandmother bill, Absolutely, which has been suspended.
I know we passed it when I was chair finance.
Right, and suspended every year since then. But the point I'm making is, I think that we should pass this, table it, and talk about it as we put together the budget. There's a $50 million, depending on what happens in HB 2, as Marty said, payment against the unfunded liability. To me, I think there are a lot of moving pieces, let's put it that way, in terms of retirement that is in the House Finance Committee passed version of HB 2. I think we would be well advised to, think about what it means on a longer term basis to effectuate the kind of savings that would be generated from whether it's, a $10 million payment or a $100 million payment. It is definitely a good idea. Doesn't mean it can easily be funded every 2 years, but that would be my position, pass and table.
All right. Any other comments on any of the other things?
But since Howard's not here, I'd recommend that we
We're not going to act on it.
not act.
Well,
Yeah.
If we act on it, it'll be next Tuesday, but I don't know that we've got to, let's see, the Tuesday, would that be? Okay, so we've got time to do that then.
Presentations.
But again, there are ideas out there that can help us. So Marty, if you have time, I wouldn't mind having you in the office for a little bit after. So, anything else? Do I have a motion to come out of the executive session?
So moved.
We've got multiple people that want to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And our business of the day being complete, we are adjourned.
All right. Would you mind if I join the two of you?
As long as we don't have too many that get in trouble with, something. Okay.
All right. Well, that was easy.
I will probably try to get
Well, have a nice time in Florida.